Well, hey there, and welcome to Unmistakably You. I'm Amy. I'm a wedding planner and educator here in London, and I come live to you every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock to talk about hopefully relevant issues in your wedding planning. Tonight, we are here to tackle something quickly that is, I'm sure, on everyone's mind as they are navigating the wedding planning process, and that is whether or not you might be exhibiting some Bridezilla tendencies. Now, my disclaimer here is that I am not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I am just an experienced wedding planner, and I've seen a lot of things over my years. I am very blessed in that our clients don't tend to be bridezillas. Most of our clients are really respectful and organized, and they have their priorities in the right place, and they are really a pleasure to work with. But I have in the past come across some bridezillas, some momzillas, and even the odd groomzilla here and there. So I just wanted to touch quickly tonight on 5 signs that you might be verging into bridezilla territory, and then give you some strategies, hopefully, to refocus those priorities so that you are able to actually enjoy your wedding planning process, and more importantly, enjoy the actual wedding. Because my concern always with someone who is, and I really do actually struggle with the label bridezilla, but when I see brides or grooms, any partner who doesn't really seem to be enjoying the process, doesn't seem to be happy in the partnership, doesn't seem to be excited about the wedding, my concern is just always for their happiness and their well-being. And so I'd like to tackle 5 things that I have seen in the past and hopefully give you a strategy or two to help you to recenter and regain the joy in your wedding planning. The first sign that I would suggest would indicate that you're verging into bridezilla territory is if you are constantly stressed. And I'm not talking about just the passing stresses and concerns that come with wedding planning. I mean, it's a lot of money, it's an emotional and very you are very committed to your vision and what you want and what other people expect. And I don't mean just those normal stresses. I mean, you are constantly heart poundingly short of breath, waking up in a cold sweat, have lost the joy, stressed. That might be an indication that perhaps you need to find a way to recenter your priorities so that you can kind of get a handle on the fact that you are having this wedding in order to celebrate the first step of the rest of your lives with you and your partner. It is a joyous occasion, and hopefully the planning process is joyous as well. So if you're finding that you are overwhelmed and stressed constantly, maybe it's time to sit down with your partner, with your maid of honor, your wedding party, your mom, whoever it is that's a great sounding board for you, and just talk about where your stress is coming from and find ways to alleviate that stress by changing up those priorities. You don't have to have a more expensive, flashier, fancier, classier, better food, greater DJ, better band wedding than your cousin or your sister or your friend did. It's not a competition. And if that's where your stress is coming from, find a way maybe to scale it back and make the wedding more about you. If your stress is coming from finances, maybe you can find a way to refocus so that you're not spending as much money that it will make you uncomfortable. So there are always ways to refocus those priorities if you are finding that you are constantly stressed and you're not enjoying the process. The second sign that you might be a bridezilla is if you are finding that you are constantly fighting with your significant other, your wedding party, your family members. And constant fighting is usually indicative of someone's lack of willingness to compromise. So if you're finding that the same issues are coming up and that you feel like nobody's listening to you, ask yourself if you're listening to them. Ask yourself if you're being respectful of the priorities and desires of the other stakeholders in the wedding. Yes, it's absolutely a really important day. It's the only time you're ever going to do this. It's quote unquote, the biggest day of your life thus far. But there does need to be some give and take and some compromise. It isn't just your day. I hate to break it to you. It is your day for sure, but it's also your significant other's day, and your friends and family also have a pretty emotional stake in this as well. They love you, they want to celebrate with you, and they are going to have some opinions too. So if you find that you're constantly at the throats of the people that you love, maybe it's time to take a step back and ask yourself if there are some compromises that could be made. The third sign that you might be a bridezilla is if you find that your friends or your wedding party are starting to ghost you. They're no longer there to listen to all of your wedding rants or your wedding, discussions or your wishes or whatever they are. That might indicate that perhaps you need to refocus on the relationship and the give and take aspect of the relationship. So if you find that all of a sudden your wedding party isn't there to support you, maybe it's because you haven't been there to support them. So think about the fact that relationships are a two-way street, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your maid of honor, your best man, your best lady, any member of your wedding party or family. If you're finding that you feel like they're pulling back, maybe it's because they feel like you haven't been as supportive of them recently, and maybe you need to refocus that. The fourth indication that you might be a bridezilla is if you find that all of a sudden you're getting pushback from vendors, or you feel like they are setting stricter boundaries or putting restrictions in place. That might be an indication that perhaps you've been misinterpreting or taking advantage of the client and vendor relationship. If you are the kind of person who is, for lack of a better word, really needy, if you are constantly trying to get vendors to make changes, compromises, bend the rules, give you a little bit extra of A, B, or C, maybe you're going to find that those vendors eventually will reach the point where they aren't able to give any more. So obviously you are paying your vendors to provide a service, but just be mindful of the service that you are actually paying them for. And then think about those professional boundaries that are going to make sure that that client and vendor relationship stays healthy and stays professional. If you're taking advantage or if you are overstepping, that might be a time when vendors will start to push back. And that might be an indication that maybe you need to step back, take a breath, and think about the actual boundaries of your client and vendor relationship. Finally, if you find that you are having nightmares about really, really specific and potentially mundane things, like your napkins not being folded properly, or you're not wearing the right shoes, or something that's really, really specific, and you're having nightmares about this repeatedly, it's an indication that your subconscious is worried about things that perhaps in the grand scheme of things aren't that important. So again, this might be a chance to step back and get some perspective on why you're doing this and what's important to you and to your loved ones. So if you can get that perspective focused on the commitment, the love, the celebration, the joy, and less focused on those minute little details, your subconscious is going to be able to take a breather and not be so zoned in on those things that realistically nobody else is going to notice. So to recap, if you find that you are constantly unreasonably stressed, you are fighting with your loved ones or your significant other, your wedding party or your friends start ghosting you, if you feel that vendors all of a sudden have put up walls, or if you're having really specific nightmares, you may be completely unwittingly verging into Bridezilla territory. But the good news is that it does not have to ruin your experience. You can find a way to take a deep breath, take a step back, refocus those priorities, focus on the joy, the celebration, and the commitment, and less on the tiny little details, and recognize that you are there to make a commitment to your significant other and start your lives together. Hopefully, you can step back from that Bridezilla line and enjoy the planning and the wedding again. As always, if you have thoughts, questions, comments, feel free to post a comment in the chat. You can send me a direct message or an email at amy@unmistakably.you.com. And we're always looking for new ideas of things to talk about that are top of mind for you as you plan your wedding. So don't hesitate to ask the questions that are bothering you in your wedding planning, and we'd be happy to try to help. Until next week, have a great week. Enjoy the planning, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.